Hey guys, Buildzoid here, and this is just going to be a quick update on the situation with the X470 Master SLI and the B450 Aorus Pro Wi-Fi, as well as the other B450 motherboards from Gigabyte, which Gigabyte marketed as a 8 plus 3-phase VRMs. And then, of course, we remember the Master SLI for, me having a meltdown over the fact that Asrock advertised, well, it was a typo, but I fell for it. So that's why I had that meltdown, because I was really like, I got my expectations for this motherboard like way up there, and then it turned up and it didn't have the international rectifier voltage controller, and I had a meltdown because I was excited, and they dashed my hopes and dreams quite expertly. Unintentionally, but really badly. So, that's that. So that was a typo. They never meant to mislead anybody. It's just really unfortunate that of all the people who fell for it, I'm one of them. Because most other people wouldn't really care that much. And, I do. So, yeah. They've corrected that. And Gigabyte, they've given up on trying to defend this motherboard as having an 8 plus 3 phase, and this motherboard as having an 8 plus 3 phase, because it doesn't. Even by Gigabyte's terrible definition of an 8 of a phase, this really isn't an 8 plus 3. So, they've just removed any mention of phase count. Which, I'm going to still point out that the average, like the consumers who know enough about VRMs that they know that phases are important, but don't know enough about VRMs to actually know how they work and what you can and can't do with different chips. And also the other thing is, it's like, even if you know how a VRM works, it isn't immediately obvious what Gigabyte is doing here with their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 inductors, right? Like, it's not immediately obvious that if you removed half of those like if you remove this one, that one, that one, and that one, that functionally the VRM would run basically the same. Actually, almost exactly the same. I'd be willing to say exactly the same, because I don't think any one of these inductors is rated so low that it would actually saturate. But anyway, so that's that's a problem. But at least they're not straight up lying in the text here. Though the other issue is they've not backed off on this one, because this one they're like, oh, it has the extra high side MOSFET, so, which is just like the thing, like, it's not a bloody 8 phase, but whatever. It's just like, at least these got corrected, which is just like, I don't know why it's so hard for them. Like, I don't believe that the engineering teams don't know what they're doing. Like, they're fully aware that this motherboard does not have 8 phases. And that it runs like it's a 4 phase. Okay. Because, but, yeah, it's just, they've backed off on these. The average consumer, and unfortunately even like motherboard reviewers, a lot of the times they will just count inductors. They'll count inductors and go like, yep, this is a 12 phase, or yep, this is an 8. Which isn't really correct, which isn't really correct at all. And I've actually made mistakes like that as well. Like, I had the Maximus 9 Apex. I didn't notice that Asus put the International Rectifier 3599 doubler, like quadruplers / doublers. They put them in between the capacitors. I didn't notice the chips. And so I thought the motherboard was a real 8 phase because I found 8 drivers, right? Like, when it's really a 4 times 2 plus 2, which is still pretty close to an 8 phase, right? But then you have motherboards like this one where there's no doubler and there's one driver for every two sets of components, and it's a 4 phase. And actually, this doesn't even have 2 sets of components because the extra high side MOSFET is missing. But hey, at least they're not trying to say these are an 8 plus 3 phase, because at that point it's just like this has at least 8 phases worth of MOSFETs and inductors. It doesn't have 8 phases of PWM signals, but You know, like, everybody does that. And on a similar note, Asrock hasn't backed off on the 12 power phase design thing either. This is not a 12 phase. But I totally understand why nobody's backing off on their fake phase counts. Because, I mean, Gigabyte backed off on these, but these were, like, really indefensible because there's no extra high side MOSFET, right? That, like, this has 8 high side MOSFETs. This has 4. So at that point, it's just like, you can't even pretend like you've doubled the amount of components because you haven't. Okay, you've doubled the inductors and the low sides. You've not doubled the high sides. And by doubled, I mean literally double how many of them there are, not actually use doublers. A doubler is a chip that you need to buy, and it needs to be compatible with the voltage controller you're using in order to actually get doubling done. So that's another thing that's really annoying. Is just like... Because this... Yeah. Anyway. So... These they've backed off. This one they haven't. The Asrock hasn't either. And the thing is, they're not going to back off because whoever backs off first is going to lose right now. Like right now, the situation is such that most people still don't know that this is a 4+2 and that this is a 4+3 and that the thing that MSI markets as an 11 phase is actually an 11+2+1 because for whatever reason, MSI decided that they're going to include their memory power in the phase count, which is just like EVGA also does that. Like where they'll take they'll take memory phases and add them to the total phase count, which at that point is like, why don't you also include the buck converter powering the chipset or the VPP rail or the million minor rails like the VCC, which actually on Z270 and Z370 they do that. Like they'll include VCCSA and VCCIO in the total phase count, which is just like, those are 10 amp rails. Nobody cares. Well, no, nobody should care. Like those shouldn't count. Those shouldn't be important. Why do you mention them? But yeah, so you know, like whoever backs up first is just going to look like they have the inferior motherboard, and that means they're going to lose on sales. And so I totally understand why nobody wants to back up, right? Because they're all doing it. And whoever stops lying about it first is just going to lose unless everybody starts understanding that all of these motherboards are actually lying about their phase counts. And then whoever backs up first actually looks like they're the most honest motherboard vendor out there, right? Because that's kind of the issue. As long as nobody knows that you're lying, you know, don't change your story because then you just look like a liar. Once everybody knows that they're like you and however many other people are lying, whoever comes forward first then looks a lot better than starts looking a bit better than the rest of the group, right? But as long as nobody knows, keep sticking to your lie. So I get why they're not dropping the phase count things, but at least they gave up on these. Though I don't know why, because that same defense that I gave for why this still has an 8+3 phase here works for these boards. Most reviewers wouldn't be able to tell the difference between this thing and that thing. Like, they literally couldn't. Like, most really wouldn't. So, you know, props to them for at least giving up on the really, really, really sketchy ones. Though, I'd really like, yeah. Anyway, so, you know, progress has been made. A very little progress, but some, nonetheless. Also, it's worth noting that actually Asrock reached out to me with an offer to actually sample me motherboards and just cooperate with me in the future. So that's really cool. Like, I'm actually really surprised that they've gone that far because my video was really disproportionate because, as I mentioned, you know, I felt really, really misled. So... and really disappointed for being misled so badly. But yeah, so, you know, I grilled them in that video and they're like, and they've actually offered to like, you know, help me with sampling. So that's really cool because hopefully that means I'll be able to Well, that takes a load off of the budget because hopefully I won't have to buy any more Asrock boards. I'll just be able to, you know, ask Asrock to send samples, test them before. Hell, I'll be able to get my hands on motherboards before launch. For the first time in history, I'll have a motherboard before launch. Yay! You know, that's going to be awesome. So, well, maybe. I'm not sure if they'll go that far, but it would be nice. So, yeah. Anyway, that's the update on the situation, and I'm working on other things for AHOC, so, you know, more videos coming soon, but like I'm one guy and there's just too much stuff to cover in too little time, especially because it's like I usually turn up late to the party. Like I didn't have Coffee Lake until this year. And actually I didn't have a Coffee Lake until I bought an 8086K. So, you know, it's like, why didn't you cover Z370 motherboards? Because I didn't have a CPU. Actually, I'll probably do a motherboard, like a video just talking about reviewing motherboards entirely, because that's just been something I've been thinking about doing for ages and ages and ages and just not got around to shooting it. Anyway, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave comments, questions, suggestions, thoughts down in the comment section below. And if you'd like to support what I do here with Actually Hardcore Overclocking, I have a Patreon, a PayPal, t-shirts you can buy, and those all help out immensely. Fun fact, $2 a month on Patreon is roughly equivalent to something like 2,000 views on YouTube. Okay? That's not monetized views, that's just raw views, because obviously people use ad block, and I don't blame you for it, okay? But just gonna point that out. Like, $2 a month on Patreon is a hell of a lot more than 2,000 views on YouTube. Is a hell of a lot more than 1,000 views on YouTube. So, yeah. That's it for the video, and goodbye.